Yeah, welcome. As it was already mentioned, I'm Rok, and I'll be talking a bit what it takes, or what happens behind the scenes of organizing a Jeopardy CTF competition. So just to gauge the audience a little bit, who here can tell me what a CTF is? Go on.
It's a competition about computer science. Your goal is to capture a flag, and this flag is like a string, an ASCII string.
Sure. I like that definition. What I have on my slides is a bit more like, I guess, legalese, legal friendly and so on. But the idea is we have a framework that allows us to develop skills in ethical hacking without breaking any laws while doing it. So who here has actually played any CTFs? Quite a few. Who here is really excited to play the CTF tomorrow? I assume all of you. So let's talk about how I got here. So who is this guy? I am a student in the Netherlands, in a small town called Delft. I like building things, and I am also into cybersecurity. So as it happens, great minds think alike. I have a couple of friends who are similar to me. So we come together and we say, hey, we should organize a CTF. How hard could it possibly be? Turns out that guy has no idea what he was just about to get himself into. So we decide to organize a CTF competition. We open registrations, and what happens kind of surprises us. We immediately get 400 signups, which was our max limit. We're like, ain't no way we're hitting this. And we split the participants into 100 teams. Most of these participants have never played CTFs before. It was their first time doing these competitions, but they still wanted to see what's up. Which means that we need a lot of tasks for them to do, right? Because banging your head against the wall is not really fun, which means that we need something they can do for an entire day, basically, which means that we have many challenges that we need to host. The number was more than 80. Of these challenges, more than half need active hosting, meaning challenges can roughly be split into two categories: the ones that you just download and have everything you need, and the ones where you actually need to interact with the server, like hacking a website. And we really want to avoid having multiple people use the same service, because you can imagine, people are not always nice on the internet. If you give everyone anonymous access to a chat room, bad things may happen. People might start, actively hurting each other. Not great. So some of the challenges are also provided by sponsors. And we love our sponsors, but we understand that they can be really, really busy sometimes, which means that they don't really have the extra capacity to come up with good challenges and get them working on our platform, which means that we need to make them easy to make. And also we're students, which basically stands for we need our university to give us hosting capacity because we're broke. And also the participants are students. And I'm not sure what you are like, but at least where I'm from, in my uni, students will do all sorts of weird things that you don't expect anyone to do. So we kind of want to have that in mind. And also we want the write-ups from the competition to be about the actual challenges, not people writing how they hacked our infrastructure and ruined the whole competition. So if we kind of model this into a couple of constraints, we want to host static challenges, which are the challenges of type, hey, let me download a file, I don't know, look at the network capture logs and find the flag. We want to host active challenges, which means we want to hack a website. Active challenges, the way we envision it is we have this little window, which is a challenge, and then you have this spawn instance button. And then you click on that thing, and you get some connection information, and you can interact with the server now. We also need to make this thing scalable, right? 400 participants is not really trivial. Running 400 instances of Spring Boot at the same time is not cheap, as you might be able to tell. And also, these active challenges need to be easy to make and deploy. We need to make the infrastructure robust because, as it was mentioned, hackers are going to do weird things that you don't expect them to do. And the whole thing needs to be flexible, meaning if we encounter anything that we don't expect to happen, we need to be able to react to it and not just completely shut down. So how do we satisfy all these constraints, right? So first thing we decided to do is let's not reinvent the wheel, right? Who would do that? That's a dumb idea. So let's start with something that's tried and true. It's called CTFD. So we were heavily inspired by them. We decided to just yoink their platform. It's open source. And you can go on GitHub, find the code there. And this is what it looks like, right? It provides a lot of like pretty things for you. It's very batteries included. You just spin it up on a server and it mostly works. But how does this translate into our constraints? Static challenges work out of the box and it works great. Active challenges are not part of this package, though. You can get active challenge hosting by paying them for their like software as a service thing, but we are students, can't do that. It is scalable. Static downloads for 400 people are something that's very trivial to accomplish with any web server. But active challenges don't exist, which means they're not easy to make and deploy. The thing is not really robust. It's written in Python. It's a lot of spaghetti code. It breaks all the time. And it's also not really flexible, right? Like, you might be surprised to hear this. Like, if you go on the website, they're going to be really loud about how you can make plugins for it. But you're not really like meant to be doing crazy things with them. So if you want to use the plugins, you're going to end up doing some crazy Python hacky things that like even the Python developers don't want you to do. So I give it minus points for flexibility there. And also the code is littered with a bunch of to-dos. And for example, there's this issue that somebody made, hey, can I help contribute to the documentation? Closed as not planned. And the reasoning was that the documentation repository was not getting a lot of help, so we just made it private. So no, you can't help, which was slightly sad. So what's the sensible thing to do? Screw what I said earlier, we're going to reinvent the wheel. Yes, we're making our own thing. Well, not really. We're going to fork it. So we break free of the constraints of the upstream maintainer, and we just start hacking at the thing. And first thing we focus on is active challenges, because I feel like this is the hardest thing to get right in any Jeopardy CTF competition. So we are students. We just learned some cool terms at uni, like Docker and container. You might see where this is going. Sounds like it will be reasonably easy to deploy Docker images, right? You can just do os.system and then like run the Docker command that you need to run. Should be fine. And this is like roughly the infrastructure diagram of our first prototype. Works great, right? Well, it doesn't work well. It has a couple of problems. Static challenges are still very easy to facilitate. We're just taking CTFD, which already does it well. Active challenges also work, but it's not really scalable, right? If I have one machine running like 400 Docker containers, and each Docker container runs like consumes 1 GB of RAM, things get sad very quickly, right? Like university is like, nah, the best we can do is 16 gigs. Deal with it. You can get multiple servers if you want, but then we need to implement our own load balancing over like different servers, and that was something that we're not really prepared to tackle just yet. Active challenges were very easy to make and deploy because it's ultimately just a Docker image or even a Docker compose file that you can just run. Not really robust. There's a lot of like finicky things that you need to take care of in order to not get hacked. More about that later. And it's not really flexible, right? It's kind of hard to react to things with this setup. So to kind of get into more details what exactly is wrong about this, CTFD is unreliable and can't be trusted in the first place. Port assignments become a really big issue, right? If 10 people want to run the same challenge that exposes port 80, like I need to give each one of them a different port, and where do we keep track of that? How do we like then after a while kill challenges and make sure that they are expired the way they should? Network policies are also very experimental, hacky, and hard to navigate in Docker. For example, we don't want different people's challenges to talk to each other because that just sounds like a terrible idea. So we wanted to avoid that. So how can we improve? We went back to the classes, and we learned some more cool terms like Kubernetes and cluster, and microservices, the greatest thing that has happened to mankind in recent years. So this is roughly the architecture layout that was like our next iteration of the infrastructure. So to kind of give you a brief idea of what's happening, we have like the Kubernetes cluster that's running on like 3 servers, right? As I said, the servers we can get from university are not really powerful, but we can get quite a few of them. So we can just install Kubernetes on all of them and run, so scale horizontally, not vertically. We have this like microservice that's like represented by the cog, and this is what like our execution service would be. Basically, we don't trust CTFD. It's too much spaghetti code. And we just said we're going to write our own microservice that's going to manage the life cycle of these like challenge containers for us. Meaning, when a person wants to start a website, you just click a button, and then this microservice is actually going to spin up the container for you, and then make sure that like if you're not really using the challenge for half an hour, it's just going to kill it away, so we can like free up some capacity for other people. And we have a website, which actually which is CTFD, which dispatches requests to our microservice. And what's great about it is basically everything, right? Like it's amazing. You can scale this horizontally as much as you can possibly want. Challenges are still easy to make because they're ultimately just Docker containers that you can run. We even got Docker Compose set up to work in Kubernetes, which is not really straightforward if you've ever done it. It is robust. Like Kubernetes is a very well-tested framework, if you want to call it that. It's very easy to manage network policies and so on. And it's also quite flexible, meaning with Kubernetes we have a lot of freedom to decide how exactly we want things to run. Do we want to run like these challenges on this specific server for whatever particular reason? Maybe we add like a server that has an ARM architecture, and then we can do ARM binary exploitation challenges that are running on that specific node. It becomes quite nice to work with. But I was talking about this robustness. We have hackers trying to break things. So what happens when they actually decide, what, let me try and ruin the day for these guys? So this is like a message that was sent in our organization Discord server, right? Like basically it reads, hey, maybe like we have one more kernel pwn that we like haven't really noticed. And this kernel pwn in question was that CVE. So this CVE was publicly announced, I think, roughly 2 weeks before our competition. And if you look at like the description, it doesn't look that scary. So like the base score 5.5 or 3.3, right? And basically the only thing that's slightly concerning is availability impact. And NVD rates it as low, right? So we're just thinking, okay, worst case scenario, somebody might try to denial of service us. We were all under the impression that Kubernetes and Docker is this great isolation thing that is basically a VM. Yeah, not really. If your kernel is vulnerable, you're in trouble. And then we receive, like through some back channels, some weird Discord messages, which is basically, I'm not sure if you know Dutch, but what it roughly states is, hey, I got local privilege escalation out of this. And to make things even better, Ubuntu, which is our operating system, did not release patches for it. So what does one do now? Any ideas? What would you do, guys?
Cry.
That's what we did for quite a while, but then realized we still need to organize a competition. Crying, an option, but it doesn't solve the problem, unfortunately. Well, I mean, the natural thing was, right, to develop a custom kernel patch for it. The upstream was patched. We just needed to pour that patch onto the Ubuntu server. But I think this is just one example of what can happen, right? And that also made us think, kernel 0 days coming out, or I guess in this case, weaponized 1 days, it's kind of this gray area where, there was local privilege escalation in it, supposedly, and nobody really was doing anything about it. It can happen again, right? So we need to be ready for it. And ultimately, what these people, like, if you have a local privilege escalation exploit, what you're looking to do is kind of ruin the competitive integrity. You want to violate the competitive integrity. Some people are really passionate about CTFs. They really want to win, right? So like having somebody cheat is not fun. So the solution that we came up with, besides patching the kernel, is to kind of also, take advantage of the fact that this was an on-site CTF, meaning that we had quite a lot of visibility into who to expect to show up there, and we made a list of like potentially problematic people, right? People who have the capability to turn like an announced vulnerability in the Linux kernel into a local privilege escalation. There were not many people who were capable of doing that. So we decided to like modify this thing a bit and basically create a new VM where we put all the like potentially problematic people into. Whatever they do in there, we don't really care, right? If it crashes, too bad, right? Like the IT support people are not going to be there on Saturday, so I guess they can wait till Monday for their server to come back online. We don't really care, right? And this was ultimately what proved, the flexibility and also robustness of our solution, right? Like this situation, we could have anticipated beforehand, yes, but also we were able to very quickly react to it. And what we ended up doing is like spin up a new Kubernetes cluster that was on a completely separate infrastructure in a completely separate VLAN within the cybersecurity range, IP address range. And we ended up like mirroring what the rest of the players were using. And then CTF, the website, when it received the request, hey, I want to start working on this challenge, routed the request to the appropriate Kubernetes cluster, the one for the clowns, the naughty people, or the one for the players who we cared about a bit more. So in terms of competitive integrity, here like the infrastructure side of things kind of ends, and I just want to like go through some things that we've done and we've realized are kind of cool and make sense to do. Extensive monitoring really helps. So what we've done in this specific case with this vulnerability, we never told the people who are planning on abusing it that we know about the fact that they want to abuse it. So we deployed a kernel patch that also gave us visibility into it, so meaning that if anyone wanted to exploit that specific vulnerability, we would receive a notification about this. We also started gaslighting those people and telling them that our servers are actually running ARM, where the exploit would be completely different. And funnily enough, they actually started making and preparing their exploit for ARM. We started deploying unique flags, not really related to the kernel 0-day, but we wanted to prevent flag sharing. You have two ways of doing it. You have like this system that you might have seen. You just append some random string to the flag. We thought we would be a bit sneakier. We don't want to tip people off. So we changed capitalization in our flags. Turns out you can actually catch people that way. So we had 2 teams disqualified out of our competition based off of this. This was done only for active challenges, meaning like where we had challenges where we had the capability to inject the flag into like the container via environment variables. We also were running detection for impossible scenarios. So for example, if I have like a challenge where I want you to look at a PCAP, I really want to know how you managed to solve it without ever downloading a PCAP. That would be kind of crazy if you've done that. The other thing also, if you can manage to hack a website, let's say an SQL injection challenge, without ever interacting with the server, I have a job for you. We can make great money hacking things that way without leaving any traces. And then also, just kind of to like leave you off with like some future development happened very recently. You can just make AI agents run untrusted things from the internet, which was employed to some extent by Pico CTF this year. And turns out they banned like, I think, close to 100 people based off of detections of this alone. So yeah, roughly this is what it takes to run a Jeopardy CTF competition in a way that somewhat preserves competitive integrity, we hope. So far we haven't received any complaints about it. And yeah, if you do this, it's totally gonna work, right? So yeah, this is where I leave you guys. Thank you for being here. And if you have any questions, happy to answer them now.
OK, so do we have any questions? OK. Any hands? Yeah, OK. I'll run.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I feel it's a bit also cheating from your side. I mean, if I am able to, like, OK, if it's not a 0-day, it's a bit of cheating. But my question is, what about using gvisor or something like that to kind of isolate the containers so they don't share a kernel and you're kind of better off?
To share, sorry, can you repeat just what would?
Yeah, gvisor, it's like container runtime that kind of.
Right, I mean, OK, so I think this is the idea we discussed. What if we actually had like a separate VM for every team? I think that was the idea we wanted to go down. Turns out like the extra overhead wasn't working for us. We were resource constrained, and like having different challenges not share, or different teams not share the kernel wasn't feasible from the resource point of view, unfortunately. While yeah, in an ideal world, everyone gets their own VM to hack on, we just couldn't afford it at the time.
Okay, thanks.
Hope that answers it.
Any other questions?
If that's it, thank you guys for listening again, and yeah, happy to talk later.